Yeah, welcome to the Colosseum Frontier Workshop. Today we have with us Steve from Triton. He's a OG in the space. He's so OG, in fact, he has a Solana tattoo. He's the first person to ever get a Solana tattoo, and he's also he's also somewhat of a musician himself. He's gonna play for us one day, and hopefully, I would have practiced enough guitar to join him. But welcome to the welcome to the show, Steve. So
Thanks
glad
so
to
much
have
for
you.
thanks for having me. I'm excited to help everyone out, learn a thing or two about infrastructure and why it matters, what the most common pitfalls are, and have everyone get a basic understanding of what infrastructure is, how does it work, and how do you leverage it to your advantage, and answer everyone's questions around RPC infrastructure. What's on the horizon, how we did things in the past, how we're doing them now, and how we'll do them in the near future. So excited to be here. If everyone's ready, I'll just start taking it away. I'm gonna share my screen. I prepared a little something. Let's see if this works. So I like to use Microsoft Paint. Looks like I'm sharing it right now. Hope, can you guys see it? Check. Anyone? Can you guys see my screen share? Yes. Now you can. All right. So let's talk about RPC infrastructure. I was gonna do a quick intro, then what the pillars of RPC infrastructure are, as I like to explain them, and then take the time to take your guys' questions, which among others might be these. So what is RPC infrastructure? So RPC stands for Remote Procedure Call. When Solana was built as a blockchain, there were several validators. On other blockchains, the validators also act as the nodes that perform the remote procedure calls. On Solana, this does not work. There's a lot of data generated every second, which means that all staked nodes or validators are preoccupied validating each other's blocks, sending out threads if you're a block producer, processing transactions. And then if you receive those threads, you're part of the network. You have to vote on the blocks that the block producer is sending you, or the information from the blocks that the block producer is generating. So if protocols or people want to query the account state, the nodes are performing too many tasks, which slows down the entire network. This means that on Solana, RPC nodes are running the same software as the Solana validators are, but they are not staked. So they are not performing any voting or block verification on the blockchain. They just serve data to teams or protocols that require it. So this could be front end traffic, this could be back end traffic. So any interaction with the blockchain generally happens through an RPC node. Blockchains are basically really large databases or ledgers that have a record of all transactions that ever happened on a blockchain, all accounts that get created, and every interaction with those accounts. So we call this the ledger. And on Solana, this ledger, which is just raw transactions, is half a petabyte big. So that's 500 terabytes, which is 50,000 gigabytes, which is something megabytes, something kilobytes. So this is generally a lot of data. So Solana recently turned 6, I think, 5 or 6. So since that time, many transactions happened. over 400 billion. This is a lot of data. All these transactions lead to the current account state, which is basically a record of who owns what. So if you open up your wallet, you'll be able to see, all right, I've got this many SOL tied to my account, or my wallet address, or public key. So there's many names you can use for the same thing. How many USDC do I have? How many Fartcoin do I own? So this is all the current state of Solana. And the current state of Solana, because it's proof of history, is built up from one transaction on another. So if we would not have the entire history of Solana, the data would not be valid, because every transaction is built up on a previous transaction dating all the way back to the start of the Solana blockchain. So as an RPC provider, it is really important to have this data, because if you don't have this data, you might return the wrong information if someone says, how much USDC do I have? And this could, mess with the entire blockchain, basically. So RPCs perform 4 basic tasks, or I like to perform many tasks, but to make it simple, I like to divide it in 4 basic pillars of infrastructure. So what I just went over is the ledger of the blockchain. So what I can do is go here and make a little drawing to support this. So this is a block, this is a block, this is a block, this is a block, this is a block. So this is a blockchain. And in this blockchain, let's call this blockchain Solana. What's the best option for slot level historical data? Healy's, all right. Yeah, good information. So let's name these block 1, block 2, block 3, block 4, and block 5. So this is the ledger of our example blockchain. So let's say in block 1, a few transactions happened. Block 2, a few transactions happened. Block 3, transactions happened, and so forth and so on. So we call this the ledger. And this is required because if you want to know what transactions have happened, you want to look up, did I pay Brian or whoever the $100 I was promised to send him? You can look this up in, for instance, SolScan or another explorer.solana.com. And they require this data to show what transaction happened and what transactions didn't happen. So we call that the ledger. The current account state, which is right here, is what accounts do have what information or what tokens right now, what values assigned to them. So this is the second pillar of what RPC nodes do. How many funds do I have in my wallet right now? What is the funding rate of this borrow platform right now? We call that current account state. So this is a really, really large database of everything as it is now. As soon as a transaction happens, that account state changes, and this happens in real time. So ledger is really important for verifying the validity of the blockchain, basically. Account state is for getting account info. So if you're building on the Colosseum hackathon, think of this like if you're building a wallet, you need to know what tokens are in the wallet, what if there's a staking account tied to your wallet, if there's the withdrawal authority, who has that, stuff like that. Because Solana is so high performance, this brings us to the third pillar of infrastructure, which is streaming. So as the blockchain gets built, the block producer sends out its information, which is a stake node, to other stake nodes, and then eventually this information also ends up with all RPC nodes. So all machines in the network are working together to keep track of what the account state changes are. And you can listen to this information through streaming. So Triton One has built the Yellowstone product suite, which you might have heard of if you're building on Solana. So Triton One actually wrote the gRPC client, which is called Dragon's Mouth. And with Dragon's Mouth, you can listen to all events happening on chain. So all the transactions that are happening, all the account state changes, you can listen to through Dragon's Mouth. You can listen to specific accounts. You can listen to certain accounts tied to programs. You can filter out what you want to listen to. And then you're going to be sent all that information from the RPC node with a slight delay of the RPC node receiving that information from the network as well. And it's important to understand this if you're building something which is latency sensitive. We'll get to that in a few minutes if you guys want to. So streaming is important because some protocols require to act upon changes really fast. So for instance, if you have a borrow or lending position and you want to know as fast as possible when this borrow or lend, if it goes underwater, you want to liquidate it as fast as possible to prevent losses. So it's really important that you can act on these events as soon as possible. Or for instance, if you have a payment terminal, you want to listen to the account where you expect the payment to come into, so that as soon as the account state changes, you can, for instance, mint an NFT, or send someone a ticket, or give someone access to your platform, stuff like that. So streaming is really important because it tells you what you need to know as fast as you need to know it. One of the most common problems is that, things that people who start building on Solana find difficult, not necessarily a problem, is that they don't leverage streaming to their advantage yet. So what we're often seeing at Triton One is that people who are building a program, instead of opening a stream and listen to the account state changes, they send a request saying, all right, what's the state of this account? And then after a few milliseconds, they want to know, did it change? I don't know. Let's ask again. What's the current account state? Get account info, or get multiple accounts. And they repeat this at a high frequency. So most RPC providers, if not all, they charge per call that you make because they don't operate for free. There's a lot of infrastructure involved. And these machines that serve this data get expensive pretty easily. For reference, if you want to have a dedicated streaming node at Triton One, it's going to cost you $2,900 per month. And for that money, you get a Generation 4 bare metal Epic AMD 32 core processor with 768 gigabytes of RAM and all other goodness. So yeah, this is quite costly. So yeah, to get back, they charge per call. At Triton One, we charge $10 per 1 million calls for these types of calls. And then you also pay 8 cents per gigabyte of data returned. So this is probably the most competitive pricing you'll see in the ecosystem, hopefully. If not, make sure to tell me. But this gets expensive really fast because you can send within the span of a minute 1 million RPC calls asking the same question that will get you the same answer over and over again, which is highly inefficient. So for all the people who were ever a child or have children themselves, it's the equivalent of having a kid in the background asking, "Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet?" when driving somewhere in the car. If you would switch this out with streaming, the kit or your protocol would be able to keep track of where you are and if you are there yet, if there's already an account state change. And as long as there's no change, no data is being sent to you as a recipient, which means that you're not paying anything until anything happens. So based on this principle, we are redesigning the way RPC or what RPC is and what it does on Solana, which will lead to something further later on called RPC 2.0. For those who know, we this week announced that we are working together with the Solana Foundation on the next iteration of what RPC infrastructure looks like for Solana. Give me 1 second. Yeah, I'm back. So yeah, talking about streaming, those who actually build on Solana know and are using gRPC to power any part of their protocol or to listen to account state changes or transactions on chain in real time. These people know that you can actually miss account state changes as soon as your gRPC connection disconnects. So it doesn't happen often, but it might happen if an undersea cable gets cut, if the internet service provider has an issue, your connection can get lost, and then you have to reconnect. But during that window of time where you get disconnected and get reconnected, you don't know if you missed a transaction because you're not streaming the account state. You're only streaming the transactions happening to those accounts. So this provides builders with a problem. As soon as they disconnect, they need to rebuild and do a backfill of all the information they might have missed, but you don't know if you actually have missed information. So because of this, we built a product, a streaming product called Fumarole, which is a more persistent stream. And I'm going to get my little whiteboard here again. Let's go like this. New. No changes. So Fumarole is a gRPC stream which sends all transactions to your backend from the network. So let's put this at backend, and this is the network. So this is Solana. And this is your backend. So normally streaming looks like this. And as soon as this gets cut, you are going to have a problem because you don't know what information went through this pipeline in the time you were disconnected. So what we did is we built a intermediary system called Fumarole. Fumarole. This is excellent spelling. There we go. Solana. And here's your backend again. So what Fumarole does, it sends or it receives the the information of multiple Solana nodes. So if one gets disconnected, we can be very sure that the others are still receiving information from other sources. So what Fumarole does, it deduplicates, so it makes sure that it ends up with only every transaction only one time, and from there it sends it to your backend. And the upside of this is that against very little increased latency, you can have a reliable stream. The other upside is that if you get disconnected from Fumarole, Fumarole knows it knows what information you received last. So what it actually can do is it pauses the stream. As soon as you get disconnected, it say, all right, I'm going to hold off on sending you this information until you get reconnected. And then I'm going to pick up where you left off. So I'm sending you transaction A. I know you received it. I'm going to send you transaction B. I know you received it. I sent you transaction C. I see you got disconnected. So I'm going to pause and not send you any more information because I know C did not reach you. As soon as you get disconnected, I'm going to pick up where I left off, and I'm going to send you transaction C, going to send you transaction D, going to send you transaction E, and so forth and so on. So what Fumarole does, it pauses the stream and it allows you to pick up where you left off. So this is a very powerful tool for people who want to have as cheap infrastructure as you can, because you're not polling, you're not asking the RPC machines any questions, and we don't send you any data unless transactions are happening actually. And you are very sure that you received all information because we pause the stream and we pick up where we left off as soon as you get disconnected. So there's no information lost. This is really powerful. And because accidents happen, so let's say your backend lights on fire, and you have to rebuild a new backend or do an entire backfill or put out the fire, whatever, go to the store, buy a new backend. We save this data for 23 hours. So hours. So if everything goes to shit, you can reconnect and all the information that you missed will be stored up to 23 hours and you can reconnect and start streaming again. And it's so performant that if your backend is performant enough to receive all that information as it's being sent to you, it will catch back up to the tip. So it'll start with the transactions that happened 23 hours ago, and it'll send you in such a velocity and with such high bandwidth that within a few hours you can be caught up to the tip of the network, and you have all the information that you missed. I see El Chu asks a question. This remains transparent to the end user, the developer. We simply use streaming and Triton One works its magic, right? Yeah. So this works the same as opening a gRPC stream with a slight modification and with a specialized endpoint. But yeah, we can set that up for you. It's all in the standard package you get with us. And I recommend using this for everything that's not latency sensitive. So this might be up to 400 millisecond added latency on a confirmed commitment level. No, on a processed commitment level. For a confirmed commitment level, for those that don't know, if you don't know what that means, don't worry about it. For a confirmed commitment level, it's going to be the same latency. So this is a high reliability, highly persistent system that you can use to make sure that you're running your infrastructure very cheaply and keep your data fresh. Lifar says, Fumarole is great. Lots of tests were done. Yes. And we this week announced that we're going to have more instances across the globe. So you can connect to a Fumarole instance close to home, as close as possible. This is very cool. I agree. So yeah, let's go back to the 4 pillars and see where this fits in. So we spoke about Ledger, the entire history of Solana, and why it's important to have that, because without it, the everyone can say anything and say, "Oh yeah, I've got 1 million USDC," and then, well, where did that come from? And like, do you really have it? Yeah, it's trust me, bro, I have it. So unless several parties have the exact same data and you can prove that you actually have this account state in a verified way, it's very important. Otherwise, a blockchain means nothing, basically. We've spoken about accounts. So all those transactions leading up to what the current account state is. So if you ask the RPC to return the contents of a certain account, how much Sol is in this wallet, how much USDC is in this token account, what's the staking account for Solana as a whole. And I touched up on streaming. Now, if you're looking for real low latency, there's a few tricks that we can do there as well. So we can send um, uh, transactions to your backend as soon as they are handled by the block producer. So if a transaction gets processed by the block producer, it sends out information to the network and says, all right, I've ingested this transaction, I've written it in this block, and it sends that information out to other validators to verify if it's a valid transaction. If the block producer in that block where it's writing that transaction decides to drop the block and skip the slot because it panics, because there's a fork, or for whatever reason, it sends out that information too, like, never mind, I'm skipping this block. The transaction in that case did get processed, but it didn't get confirmed or finalized. So it didn't get ingested into the blockchain. So this is an important differential to make. When the block producer emits this data, it needs to be verified by the RPC node as well. The RPC node checks and runs the transaction information to change the account state locally. So every node in the network, including RPC nodes, they all have the same database of what account has what. So in order to make changes to that, the RPC node needs to make changes to their local database by replaying that transaction. So we can skip that step and send you de-shredded information instantly. So yeah, this skips a step. We can improve the latency. So you're going to get the information faster. So if you're a trader or building a trading bot, or maybe a copy trading bot, this is relevant to you because you want to know the data as soon as possible, because you're racing against other traders or copy traders or whatever. So we offer that too. So right now we know about the ledger, which is the entire history. We know about account state, who holds what. I've told you guys about streaming. And now also one of the more important things is writing the blockchain. These transactions, where do they come from and where do they go? And there's a few tricks we can do here as well. So in order to write a blockchain, you also could use an RPC node. There's an RPC JSON RPC instruction called send transaction, which allows for the creation of token accounts, sending tokens, or writing instructions on the blockchain. A transaction has a minimal amount of compute units. So you're paying Sol to write your transaction onto the blockchain. And then on top of that, you can pay a priority fee, which is basically a bribe of the validator and saying, hey, I'll pay you more if you prioritize my transaction over all the other transactions. Early last year, when there were a lot of transactions happening on Solana at the same time, think about the period where the Trump coin was launched or the Melania coin. A lot of people were saying that Solana was not working, but it was actually working very well. There were just too many transactions to write down, and priority fees went through the roof. What a lot of people didn't realize is that Solana uses transaction queues, and transactions were dying out in those queues because a Solana transaction, its block hash, can only live for 150 slots. And if a transaction does not get included into the blockchain within that time, the transaction fails, basically. So a lot of people were trying to pay more and bribe the transaction or bribe the validators into including their transactions. So there were a few tips that we could give there. If you standardize a transaction and build it up in the default mode, if you will, it's going to announce to the validator, it's going to say, oh, I've got this huge big box which holds this transaction. And then a validator thinks, all right, that's a really big box. I only have so much room to put that box into that transaction. So it's probably not going to fit. So I'm going to pick a smaller box because I can fit more smaller boxes in my block and I get paid per buck. So if you set a compute budget limit manually and fit it as tightly as the transaction is, the validator is more likely to process your transaction faster than when you announce a very big compute budget, because it'll look at its block that it's building. It's like filling up a sea container. And if you bring a transaction this small in a box as big as the sea container, it's going to say, this is not economically feasible for me. I'm going to prioritize the smaller boxes because I get paid more. So setting a compute budget limit is a smart idea. During that time, stake-weighted quality of service also got announced. And stake-weighted quality of service basically means we're going to skip the transaction queue. We're going to use the network layer that the validators use to talk amongst each other, which is the most important communication on the network, because otherwise blocks would not be verified. We're going to send not only the vote transactions over this part of the network, but also normal transactions. So this is called stake-weighted quality of service. Since then, we have built an entire marketplace where validators could sell their transaction bandwidth to market participants such as yourself. But we also tore that down, and now everyone just gets stake-weighted quality of service through a custom transaction sending software that we built and open sourced. It's called Yellowstone Jet. And basically, it skips the RPC node in sending transactions while still adding or having the option to add stake weight to it. This transaction sending software also lets you determine and set rules for who can handle your transactions. So as some of you know, some validators, they do front running or back running, or they sell your transaction data to third parties who then front run your transactions if it's trade and back run it afterwards. This is called sandwiching. So what Triton One did is we built a on-chain program called Yellowstone Shield, which allows for adding a header in your transaction saying, all right, I don't want these validators to handle my transactions. I'm not going to pay a validator to front run and back run me, which is, a good thing. So if you use Triton One sending software, you can integrate this and you can determine, like, I only want straight shooters to handle my transactions, basically. I see a question. I live in a part of the world where the ping is dog shit. Wow. Can Triton One help this, or is this a regional skill issue? It depends. So let's talk about latency and let's talk about ping. Unless there are more questions about sending transactions, which I think there are not. If there are any questions, just ask them in the chat. I will eventually reach them. So yeah, Ace, let's handle your question. So the globe, Earth, planet Earth is fairly big. It's round, and it takes some time for information to reach from point A to point B, basically. If I send a message from Tokyo to New York, it's gonna cost around 150 milliseconds over the public internet. It's gonna travel through optic fiber through the bottom of the sea, and then it needs to find its fastest way to your region, basically. So there's several aspects to this, and then there's also the latency between me typing the message and then my computer converting that into ones and zeros, basically, and sending that information to my router, and then my router has to process that information and send it to the internet service provider, and then that internet service provider needs to process that information and forward it to the nearest switch, and then from that switch it's going to go to a switch near you, and so forth and so on. So when we're talking about latency, we could be talking about how long it takes for information to be processed. When we're talking about latency, we could be talking about the time that the information is in flight between 2 points, which is also always going to be bigger than 0. And then eventually also the processing time to receive and process that message. So the ping being dog shit is probably for you the bottleneck that your ISP provider has with the rest of the network. So companies like 00 are working very hard to use a separate internet, create a separate internet from the public internet to send Solana data over. So this could be market data, this could be voting between validators, this could be sending shreds. So there's amazing stuff happening there. I recommend looking into it. It's super fun. But yeah, your ping being shit it's probably an issue with not having optic fiber, maybe in the place where you live, or the distance between you and the nearest internet switch, or anything like that. When we're talking about latency, it's always best to keep the distance as short as possible and the computing power as high as possible, while keeping the traffic low. So yeah, I often get asked about latency, and yeah, usually we could interchange the word latency with distance. if all is well. Which brings me to RPC 2.0. What is RPC 2.0? RPC 2.0 is going to change the way that it's a regional issue. Yeah, no worries. It's a good question. So RPC 2.0 is partly going to fix some latency issues. Like I said, RPC stands for Remote Procedure Call. So what this means is that you have a computer, which is probably running a program or a script, or a backend that's running a program or a script. And anytime it needs to find out about the local account or the current account state of any account on Solana, it sends a question over the public internet or over private internet, over a public network, private network, to another computer, and it asks, what's the account state for this account? And then that computer is going to look up in a very large database and it's going to say, all right, let me have a look. And it sends the answer to your computer. And then if you're really inefficient, you're going to repeat that process a few times per second to see if there's any changes. So what you could do is switch to streaming, which is a lot more efficient. But it is highly inefficient to keep asking these questions to another person. It's like having a coworker who's doing the same work as you, but doesn't know what he's doing. And with everything they're doing, they're going to have to ask you, which is highly annoying. You would wish that your coworker has the same information as you. So this is what RPC 2.0 is going to be all about. So what we envision at Triton One is that instead of making a remote procedure call, you're going to have a local procedure call. So most programs on Solana don't need the entire account state. I don't need to know about all the NFT accounts if I'm not interested or dealing with NFTs. If my backend does not deal with NFTs, but it's a DeFi platform, for instance, I don't need to know all the NFT accounts. I don't need to know all idle Solana accounts because I don't deal with them. I only care about the accounts that I care about. So what if I could have the account state like an RPC node locally and just keep that data fresh with a service like Fumarole? In that case, instead of having to ask everything to the RPC node, all the information, the blockchain information that is relevant to your program, gets isolated, but already lives inside the brain of your protocol. So you integrate this account state into your backend. And then if you can sync that up with the actual account state as it is known in the entire blockchain, this is why we call Solana a global state machine. If you could have a copy of those relevant accounts in your brain, you would not have to make RPC calls, and you would rely on streaming and only pay for the information that you're being sent, and lose all the other stuff. So this is super low latency because there's no distance between the current account state and your backend anymore. We can send out the information as soon as it's happening from the block producer. We can just forward that information to you, and you basically become your own RPC provider with the information that is relevant to you. So this is what RPC 2.0 is all about. So the last few months, Triton One has been working really hard to create all the infrastructure that is needed to run this, to serve this data, but we also run it ourselves in this way. So instead of having a fleet of RPC nodes, which we still have, we've also started using other programs like Steamboat to index massive program account libraries. And because this is adaptive, it is always going to be self-optimizing for what you're using it for, which means that RPC 2.0 is going to rely for the customer on synchronizing with the account state on the network and start streaming over that, using, for instance, a product like Fumarole to keep that data fresh. Yeah, so that's pretty exciting. So anyone who's building right now for the hackathon, I want to challenge you to think about, how am I consuming my data? Am I going to rely on polling, or am I going to synchronize all the account state once and then store that locally and keep that fresh with a product like Fumarole, which is a lot more efficient than keep asking the people who know the RPC node, keep them asking questions about account state, in regards to any changes that might have happened. Let's see. We're live now. All right. Awesome. Are there any questions thus far over what I've gone over with you guys on a high level? It's a lot to take in. Took me a good 3 years to learn about all this stuff. Or is it the entire lobby empty? Am I just talking to myself? We'll see. Yeah, I'm just going to go to this part, what to pay attention to. At Triton One, we really, really believe in open source software. Most of what we do is open source, which means that every provider you go to can run the software that we've built. Some other providers also create developer tools, like products in the Yellowstone Geyser suite, but they make them closed source. So if you're building something and you want to switch protocols, you might end up not being able to make a switch easily between providers, but you're stuck with the one that makes the custom RPC calls, which might be convenient short term, but there's always a danger in the long term that you might up getting stuck, basically. What I also think is really important to point out for you guys is that RPC infrastructure can easily become really, really expensive. So think about your data pipeline. Are you going to store data, or are you going to call the RPC node 50 times to ask the same question and get the same answer? For instance, if your backend relies on an historical call that happened a week ago, a month ago, if you're querying that, get signatures for address, or get transaction, or get block, if you're interested in reading the entire block, make sure that if you need it again, or gonna need it again, you store it locally. So you move it from the RPC node into the brain of your program, and you don't have to ask twice, because you eventually end up paying for every question that you ask the RPC node, which is basically the hard truth. It doesn't run on sunshine. Well, it does run on sunshine if there's solar panels, but yeah, the hardware costs money, so we're always going to charge you for it. The same thing goes for keeping account state locally and keeping that data fresh with a service like Fumarole. And I really can't stress this enough. Make it as cheaply and as efficiently as possible. Challenge yourself to put our company out of business if you want, by spending so little money with us. And if you have any questions, or want to have an interaction about this, or ask questions, find me on X, find me on Telegram. It's the same handle as my X account. Book some time with me. I will take the time to help you guys with this stuff. Another question. I use DAS and Titan a lot. Yeah. So for those who don't know, Metaplex alongside Triton One, we created the DAS API, which is the Digital Assets Standard, which is a secondary index of NFTs, compressed NFTs, but also fungible tokens. So yeah, you can make DAS API calls, which return, you know, an entire NFT collection or all the holders of a certain collection, or who holds what NFTs and stuff like that. And Titan is a decentralized exchange aggregator. So if you're swapping, then you're probably using either Metis, Jupiter, or Titan. I use DAS and Titan a lot. At first, I did everything wrong, but nowadays it works great. It's a real-time game with around 30 players online every day, and the daily cost is $8 or $80 per day. So 100% recommend Triton One. Well, thank you very much. That's valuable feedback. Yeah. So with us, you can have an option where you only pay for the data you use. So you don't need an expensive subscription. You can go to our website, sign on. You can make a deposit of $125. And this deposit remains valid for a year. So if you use around $10 worth of data per day on average, it's going to be a lot cheaper. It's going to be a lot cheaper than the cheapest RPC plan you can buy. And it has access to all services. So ledger data, secondary indexes like DAS API, trading APIs like Metis, like Titan, and high performance transaction sending. So yeah, the best out of the box on Solana for a single deposit. And if you use more, you use more. If you don't use it, you're not paying anything, and you can save that money for when you do need it. So it's like a RPC vending machine. You throw in money once, and then you get RPC power back. And it remains valid for 12 months. So it might look a steep investment, but yeah, if you're building on Solana, it's definitely going to be worth it. Any other questions thus far? It's a lot to take in. Most people don't think about infrastructure that much, which is good because it most of the time works. Yeah, keen on learning what everyone is building for the Colosseum hackathon. All right. I think that was it then. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Maybe Shek or Sunny wants to come up before I sign off. I'll stop sharing so you guys can see my beautiful face again. If there's no further questions, then thanks for tuning in. Thanks for learning about infrastructure. And hope to see you guys soon. And let me know if you need help.